therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of us. You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaoh? Should Christ have reduced the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shot heard round the world? The martyrs of history were not fools, and our honored dead who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis didn't die in vain. Where then is the road to peace? Or the simple answer after all? You and I have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not have. You and I have a rendezvous with death. We'll preserve for our children this, the last death hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step.
Jag gillar stora Osner.
I like big butts and I cannot lie. You other brothers.
Welcome to. This
That's
is
not
an
I
episode.
have to translate that.
Yeah, we'll see who can figure that one out. Episode 3, Freedom Radio, with Patriot Act, and we have a special guest with us today from Prison Island, Australia, Mr. Joshua. And Joshua, go ahead and say hello and introduce yourself.
Yeah, g'day. So I am Josh, and I am from Prison Island, Australia, what's also known as a penal colony, and or a convict nation. And yeah, so it's been interesting. It's been a wild ride, but yeah, we'll see how it goes.
You're back where you started, right? Started
Absolutely.
at Prison Island, and now it's a Prison Island again.
Circle back.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wanted to bring Josh on here. He's a good friend of ours, and just explain kind of what's been happening down under, and where he's going and what he's doing, and some cool, interesting news. Anybody that knows us, that listens to this show, I think the 5 people that listen to this show probably know Josh anyway. So it's really cool to hear his story and everything that's going on down there. So. Carl, I'm going to throw it off to you with him right now, kind of on some questions and stuff. So.
Okay, so hi there, Josh. You want to immigrate to Sweden. They won't let you right now, but you want to go here. And
Yeah.
In my mind, people from Western nations who go somewhere, they don't go to Sweden.
No.
Those who go to Sweden, they come from the hell of war and stuff like that. But like other Western nations, they go to the States or something, or maybe London. But you want to go to Sweden. Why is that?
Well, it's a long story short. I really feel called by God to go there. I've said that to people from day dot. So I guess my time for Sweden, I can go all the way back to when I was living in Scotland for a bit, doing some missions work, and I was living in Glasgow. And I'm going to be honest, it was about a girl in the beginning, and it still is. So in Scotland, there was
It always is, isn't it?
Oh yeah. And I was living in Scotland. There's this beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed Swedish girl that I got to know over there, and she ended up coming to Australia. And by then, I had a few family issues, so I came back to Australia anyway. Had to help out, and she actually moved to Sydney, and I served in the military in Sydney. I went to Bible college in Sydney. I did all my postgraduate work in Sydney. So I thought, okay, I'll go back to Sydney anyway, eventually. So a couple of years back, I was living back in Sydney, and I got to know her really well then. And it became this really weird thing, because all throughout my Bible college days, I was also heavily involved with European Christian Mission. And they're always doing things over in Sweden and all throughout Europe with the evangelical church. Yeah. And what happened was, during this time, I began to read newspaper clippings, and I'm a political buff. I'm everything, right into that. And a lot of the time I was reading these things and looking at all the news, and the more I got to know about the Swedish culture and the Swedish people, I just fell in love with them. And I mean, like, I'm a metalhead like the both of you, and through. And if you like that Gothenburg sound, that's just me. It's just through and through. I just love that sound. I love that atmospheric dark sound, that feel, that vibe, everything, that black and feel. And so that was another draw card and appeal for me. The other thing on top of that,
you don't have to go here to hear the music, right? It's not
oh,
only live.
Absolutely.
There's CDs and vinyls. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so you were like, people who make this music, they got to be something special, or what?
Yeah, and I think
Something
one
like
thing that's really, really given me a love for Sweden more than ever, I'd have to say, I said the same thing about Scotland, and I'll say the same thing about Sweden. It's the people. I've never met such a beautiful, open-minded group of people that they literally, I think Sweden are where the rest of the world will be in 10 years' time. Sweden, this is my personal take. So Sweden, for me, although they are a highly secular nation, I think every single other Western country at the moment that was founded on Christian principles, sadly, is losing a lot of that. But they're becoming very secular by the day. Australia is one of the most secular nations on earth. It really is, even though it was founded on Christian principles. In saying that, I think the way Sweden has really got ahead in leaps and bounds compared to every other nation is, look at this past 2 years. You know, during the pandemic, they've really remained open. They've really kept things going. Despite their...
Some events are, there's limits for how big events, but they don't chase us around the streets with masks. And I saw this week I saw 2 masks. 5 days of work and 2 masks. And I've been in like 3 different cities over the week.
Oh,
so yeah, it's nice that way, but we still had some limitations, like the number of people in a certain area and stuff like that. But it's just
I think one thing there that really has shocked me is Sweden. Above all, people say it's a very socialized country. In many respects, I don't think it is. I think, although it is a secular country, I think it's one of the most free countries on earth at the moment. Just the way they conduct themselves, and it's very much more a democracy than any other Western country. And it's something you really are not seeing anywhere at the moment as leaderships begin to fall. And so this is one thing that really has made me fall in love with it even more. And so I tend to look at things from different points of view to many people. I tend to come from the outside looking in, and I tend to always look at things from a political sense, but also from obviously a Christian faith sense with myself. And I really think, for me personally, people think, oh, okay, the church over there, it's very liberal in some sectors and that. But I look back at the early church, of course, first century, it was exactly the same.
Yeah.
So,
like the thing about freedom under responsibility, it's not just words here. It feels like they mean it. And the thing is that it goes both ways, because if it's reasonable, we can do reasonable stuff if they ask us. But I think maybe I hang out with the wrong people, or but the feeling I get from Sweden is that we are okay with being asked, but we don't like to be told.
And that is the main difference, because most of the West now moved past, asking. And as long as the large majority, if you ask a large majority of people, I'll give you a good example. We went to, sometime over the last year, we took the kids on a vacation trip for the weekend over to St. Louis, Missouri. We went to the Science Museum. We went to the zoo, the fun stuff that the kids like. And this was when they had a mask mandate in. I think they still do now. They brought it back, but it was new at the time. It was last summer, I believe. And we went everywhere we would go. I don't like wearing masks anyway, and I'm not going to unless, there's just no way around it. But when we went to the Science Center, there was a really nice lady that came up and talked to us, and she was very nice about it. And she asked us, like in a nice way. Instantly, my guard was down a little bit. I'm like, okay, because you asked nicely, I was a little bit more okay with it. I still don't think it's reasonable, me personally.
And it's not nice. It's hot, and you feel sick when you wear it. But
yes.
It's like mentally the threshold is lower if it's a nice person just asking.
Exactly. And so I felt a little bit better knowing that, okay, they have asked me to do this, so I'm not going to be the butthole about it. It changes a lot, when you do that, because, people are still people. They have rights, they have liberties given by God. They're not given by the government, as I've seen things in Australia. If you follow Sky News, they have little headlines all the time about the Premier says that she will grant more freedoms if we reach a certain vaccination rate. I'm like, they're not your freedoms to grant, lady. However, Brereja-Crillon, or however you say her name, the New South Wales Premier, I don't know.
I think one thing, actually, you nailed on the head where they're talking about granting you freedom over here. One thing we've noticed in Australia since this began is it's actually not our federal government that's the issue. People try and blame them. But although we have a conservative government over here, the federal government overseeing everything, they've had a major issue with the vaccine rollout. Everyone's known it since day dot. But it's actually, because we're a federation, it's a federation of individual states. Now, individual states here have the right to say and do as they please, where the federal government cannot overstep. Now,
that's like America, right?
Used to be.
Yeah.
Used to be America.
Yeah, but most of your weird stuff during 2020 was state politics.
That is true. Yeah, the federal government over here didn't have the power to do
the witch of the state, and you have Gavin, or what's his name?
Gavin Newsom.
Oh yeah,
nephew. Oh. Yeah.
Yeah, and you have Blasio, and you have the mafia Como.
Oh yeah, he's gone.
It's all state, right? State politics.
Yeah, it was. That's true. That the problem here, before we get back to Josh, is the problem with us is that our federal government, depending on who's in charge, the federal government, we're not doing anything. We're just telling the states to do what we want, and the states do it. Therefore, we're not doing. No, that's bullcrap. It's just like telling a private organization, like they do with big tech, that we want you to do our bidding for us. Well, then big tech is no longer a private organization. They're an arm of the state, which I've said before. But back to you, Josh.
I think actually you nailed on the head. There's all these different arms that are doing the federal government's bidding in general. We don't have that as an aspect in Australia. What we've got is we've got big tech doing the state's bidding. So it's they go lower again. And so then they come down on a localized level. Now, the problem with our states is that none of them get along at all. They used to, but every single state is rivalry over here. I mean, like, there will be blood between all the states. And at the moment, we've got three Labor states, which is the left, and then all the rest are all liberal conservative states. Now, the issue we have is all the Labor states are very hard lockdown, hard totalitarian, hard cruel. Like, we've got these stories where people who are sick and dying of cancer that can't even cross the borders to see their dying relatives, or and then we've got things where little kids who are as young as 4 that are stranded over borders and can't literally step over the road to the other state because they have to go to the airport and fly in and do quarantine. It's just barbaric. And so pretty much we've got big tech and media that are siding with the states and doing the states bidding. And it's something I've never seen before. It's a dystopia.
Yeah. It looks bad from from out here. I tell everybody, because you don't, throughout this entire time, it's not talked about in American media, same as the protests in France, Italy, the ones in Australia, the lockdown. People have no idea what's going on because all the media worldwide they want to keep everybody separated in their little rooms where you don't know what's going on over here. And so when I tell people about this at work or family or friends, it doesn't register. Like they don't understand that when we were going to a county fair or a town festival in the summer to go eat watermelon and snacks and ice cream and stuff and go on rides, I had to tell my kids, you be very thankful because there's people who are just like us in our type of society in other countries that literally cannot leave their home right now. They're locked down and they have been with no end in sight. So you be very thankful. It really puts it in perspective. So
now you said the labor states were the bastards pretty much.
Absolutely.
And so,
I'm showing my stripes.
I mean, Sweden is just one state, right? But it's a labor state at the moment.
Yeah.
Or it's a coalition with the Labour Party being the big one. And the weird thing is that who wants more lockdown here? Well, it's not the Labour Party. It's the other ones. It's the right. And it's so weird how that came about. And I'm not sure if it would be the other way around if the right was in power. If it's just, if you do that, we can't do that. If you think that, we think the upside down, I don't know if it's that or if this is what they believe in.
I think you made a good point there. I really do. Over here, I've just left Sydney. I was there for months, but for 3 whole months, my area of Sydney where the outbreak began, we were locked inside. Now, it got to the stage where, and that was a Conservative government. Now, the Conservative government there, Gladys Berejiklian, she was taken kicking and screaming to lockdown. She didn't want to. She was the person who was very anti-lockdown, very anti-mask mandate, all of that. And what happened was it was really the other states that pressured her into it and the media. And so when she finally did it, the case numbers started rising, all the deaths started happening, all that. But, you die of something every day. I'm of that opinion. Now, what happened was when she eventually went that way, all the other states then began to pressure her. So we had one of 4 reasons we could leave the house. We could either go for 1 hour of exercise a day. We could go for shopping for essential items. We could go for a health appointment, and there was a 4th reason. Now, you couldn't do all 4. You could only do one of those 4 things during the day. It was that bad. And not only that, from 5 a.m. till 11 p.m. at night, we would have things like drones on the streets.
Oh my
we would
God.
have helicopters every night on the streets with police from those drones and helicopters via speakers saying, get back in your house, go home. And it wasn't only that, but we had the police on every street corner. We had the army on every street corner. We had QR codes checking in and checking out of every venue we entered. We had to wear masks, and that was just a start.
It's all for your health, though. It's all for your health because they care. They care about
Absolutely.
you.
Oh yeah, they very much do. Right? You have both seen V for Vendetta, right?
Yes.
It's a conservative government in that one, so that's what could happen in Sweden, I guess. But
hell no.
I think it was a lot like V for Vendetta, but the other way around. It's not the fascist right that is doing it, but the fascist others.
Yes. Yeah. It's hard to imagine. I mean, they want that here. You go to New York. I mean, they don't have the military and helicopters circling overhead, but they probably would like it and they probably want it. And I can't say that about everybody who lives in New York. It's just like here. You have crazies in every bunch. Unfortunately, what's going on now in the world is that the people who are reasonable that they're taking advantage of that because they know that most people want to just go along to get along. They don't want to rock the boat because that would be seen as mean. It would be seen as combative, and we like to be nice to people. So what they do is that they take those and then they use that as against the very people that, so they can lock them in, lock them down, because now you have our own CDC, you know, the fourth arm of government now or whatever, saying that well, and they've said this for a long time, but it's not scary. I mean, they can do what they can try to do what they want, but saying, oh, gun violence is a pandemic. So, and if all these other measures that they have tried to say that they're going to use for the pandemic, and they thought they were, but thankfully the Supreme Court smacked them down on some of that. Like, you don't have the authority that you say you do, you know, which we're all sitting here like, that's the biggest theory of I've ever heard. Yes, of course they don't. Tell them to that, but just no one says anything. We just go, it just is what it is. Well, it is what it is because we all just go with it. So
I have a question, Logan, for you.
Yes.
CDC, can you spell that out with the full meaning of the name? I can't remember.
The CDC is the Centers for Control and Deception. I'm sorry, the Centers for Disease Control. Sorry.
Disease control.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the, I mean, I'm really thankful that we have a guy like Tegnell doing that work here and not Fauci. But it's also, one of the difference is in the name, because what he is boss of is the People's Health Institute, and that's a lot wider. Then you have to like think of other things than communicable diseases, right?
Yes.
So like if you have like 5,000 more suicides in a month in the States, nobody's blaming Fauci. It's not on his table. It's this other guy. Why do people kill themselves in America? Well, you know, it's like they are in different accounts, so to speak, in economic terms.
Different budget.
But yeah, different budget. but the thing with the Folkhälsomyndighet, the People's Health, you know, is that's all of it. So they kind of weigh, well, how do people feel when we lock them in? How is it bad for kids to not go to school? They have to weigh all these different aspects of health into it, so that you can't just like shoot all the sick people and say, yeah, the pandemic is over. Can't do that here.
Funny you say that, actually. Honestly, Carl, that's dark and I love it. Secondly, you know, over here, the Prime Minister said something very valuable the other day, and I really respect him for saying that. He said, you know what, we're in a pandemic and people are going to die. We have to deal with it. And he says, we're in a pandemic, old people are going to die. It's a fact of life. You have to deal with it. And, you know, that aspect has been pushed by the wayside. Instead, they're going after all this thing, trying to actually, you know, according to the CDC, which we follow as well, they're talking about, oh yeah, you guys have infected the world, man.
Yeah, I know.
and the FDA, they affect us in a big way. Now, the thing with all of this is our Prime Minister, he said, yeah, fact is people are going to die, but also, you know, we can't vaccinate kids. We can't lock kids up anymore. We can't mask kids because it's affecting their mental health and you're affecting the next generation. So we've got to deal with these two things. We've got to deal with mental health and suicides, and we've got to deal with the fact that old people are going to die. He's saying we've got to look after the younger generation, and screw it, people are going to die. He didn't use those words, but he's putting the reality out there for everyone to see. And I think now the narrative is beginning to change, because he's actually saying we can't keep doing this. We've got to open up. We have to.
How much of that had to do with, because I noticed over the last week or two, a little, like you said, a little bit of the narrative change, but I also noticed that it was coincided with the truckers blocking all the roads all over Australia. And within a day, Daniel Andrews, all these other premiers, they were all starting to say, they all started, okay, well, we're going to look at things a little bit differently now. How much did that pressure affect the narrative over there? Was it as big as what was expected? Was it disruptive as was expected, and did it work?
Yes. Yes. So I love a lot of things what Carl talks about all the time when he messages me, because he's always about freedom, raising the fist and all this. I love that. Now for me, honestly, that speaks to me, Carl. So so what happens over here was we have the issue with the truckers. Now there was one rogue guy, he was all over Instagram and social media. He's like, we're gonna riot, we're gonna stop everything. So he stopped the traffic. And actually, you know what? That did a lot. That actually, from that moment, I think it was actually cutting people off. You know, cutting people off.
And
If
they
you
don't
cut
want to
people,
admit. They don't want to admit how little control they really have. Like, that actually
absolutely.
the people, the workers, have the control. Now I know I sound like a socialist now, but they don't want to admit that if the truckers just sit down, we die. So they open up and they don't really want to, connect it to the truckers, but people with eyes can see it, right? Is that
I
about it?
think as well, I think you're right. And, you know, it's the voice of the people. Now, we look around at the moment, in Sydney alone, there's about, in New South Wales, about 5 million people that aren't working. 5 million. You know, they've been forced home to live on government subsidies while this is all happening. And it's in a lot of other states as well, beyond their control. Now, what's happening is the voice of the people are crying out. You've got all the hospitality workers, the people on lower incomes, the people who are teachers, even that are out of work or forced to be at home, the truckers, all the essential workers, they're also being affected now. And because there's no money coming in from that corner of the economy, all of a sudden the government's like, oh, we need money. We need people back to work. Oh,
Yeah. So
we're not
do you
getting
know
we're
what
not
the
getting
truckers
any
did in Sweden?
taxes.
A couple of
Yep.
years ago, when the truckers went on strike for better salary or whatever, better conditions, they had this threat that is it sounds so pathetic, but it worked. They said, if you don't give us what we want, we will keep the speed limits. Yeah. And that's like, it's horrible when the society is dependent on the truckers breaking the speed limits. Something is wrong. And the thing is that
I don't know the right word other than just it doesn't take a whole lot to influence things, and you don't have to get to revolutions and all these other crazy things that happen to be able to make change. So at least in that story, over here or in Australia, we would literally just block the road. And because if you don't have truckers in any nation, especially in the Western nations, you don't have truckers, you don't have an economy. You just don't. And all of a sudden things will come to a screeching halt in about a week, if that.
Yeah. Yeah, if you cut off supply, you win the war. I've said that to everybody. You look back at all the world wars, the minute any bit of supply was cut off, people won. You could starve someone to death and you win the war.
Yep.
You win the argument.
Yeah.
And so it comes back to a lot of
bad
things.
way to go.
Absolutely. And, I think at the end of the day, a lot of people look around at world events right now and they're panicked and they're worried. And I've said this to a lot of people, I'm not, because if you look at it, usually people's undoing is their own doing. And you look at the way, these left societies and that are going, usually it's by their own doing, they fall, by their own actions, they fall. And the minute the people actually do what they say and they stay home, like here, they stay home, they live on government subsidies, all of a sudden by the government's own doing, the government comes tumbling down and they realize, oh, we need people to work. We need people to do this. We need people to do that. So the best thing to actually do isn't comply, but actually use these people's own narrative against them. And I think that if you use that everywhere you go, use their narrative against them, it's the greatest form of defense ever.
That is such a wise thing. That needs to be transcribed and shared everywhere, right? That what you just said.
Over here, if they want to bring in mandates so you have to enter a building just to physically buy something, fine. Maybe for all the unvaxxed people and all the other people that can't get a vaccination or something, hey, guess what? Maybe they should go start up their own independent thing. And I'll tell you, with no rules. And I'll tell you what, you would see their business triple compared to the the ones that are mandated.
But
No.
that's what you have now. You're going to have the vaxxed economy and the unvaxxed economy. And the unvaxxed economy, people are eventually going to say, you know what? I'm tired of wearing the mask. I'm tired of scanning in with a QR code. I'm tired of doing all this stuff. I want to go over here where they're having fun. And it looks like it did 2 years ago. Like it looks normal, like normal human beings, you know, without all the, I mean, it's going to happen. You can't stop it unless you just shoot everyone. So,
Hey Logan, have you noticed how we start at some point and always end up in hating lockdowns?
Yeah.
How is that? So back to the question. If you would list 5 reasons why Sweden and no, and instead of the other like Western countries, and if you don't, I mean, you wanted to go here even before the lockdown stuff. So what was your if you get 5 reasons why this is not Denmark, for example, why this is not England?
I've been to England. It's overrated. Plus the English, the English look down on the Scots, and so I've got a disdain. Actually, I'll talk about Sweden, but also fun fact for the side boys. I actually lived in England for a bit because I used to work for the royal family, but that's another story.
And therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of us. You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. For should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaoh, could Christ have reduced the cross? Should the Patriot that conquered bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shot heard round the world? The martyrs of history were not...